This is the American Arson Podcast, where our goal is to spark creativity. Whether you're a musician, an artist, a writer, or an entrepreneur, we're here to provide you with tools, tips, and insight from professionals and creatives that you can use to inform and inspire your own journey. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the American Arson Podcast. We got a great episode for you today. We're going to be speaking with Jason Wisdom from Death Therapy, and some of you might know him as well from his time in Becoming The Archetype.
Yeah, we're stoked to have Jason on. He's gotten to be a good friend of ours over recent times, and we knew that as soon as we started this, we wanted to have him hop on for an episode, talk about his journey in the music industry, his different projects, past and present, and just chat about some different things that are going on in the industry and in the world right now. So we're stoked to get it going.
Yeah. And if you haven't heard of his music, it runs the gamut of genres and musical styles. So chances are you'd probably like something that he's done. He's an extremely creative person, so he's a great fit for this show. So, all right, let's jump into it then. Jason, how's it going today?
Yo, man, it's going good. Good to see you guys.
Yeah, you as well.
Good to see you.
I'm glad I get to watch a little soccer over there on Jesse's screen.
There's this awkward when I don't have something on there, there's this awkward reflection, and I have a giant poster of like Chuck Norris jokes in the background, so you just see like a reverse like image of Chuck Norris's face in the reflection, and it's just, so I was like, what can I do to cover that up?
It's like Chuck Norris is looking over Jesse's shoulder, like waiting for him to say something stupid. There it's gonna be disappointed.
Yeah, actually, that's a great idea. Next time I do a Zoom meeting, I'm actually just gonna like point my camera at a TV that's playing something interesting rather than myself. People can just watch that.
We wanted to make sure you didn't get bored with us.
This whole podcast episode, people are just going to be looking right here, just watching.
Yeah, totally.
So how are you staying busy during the quarantine here that we are hopefully coming to the end of?
Yeah, that would be awesome, right? So just trying to write a bunch of music and create a bunch of content and stuff. I feel like it's totally cool if artists don't have time. I mean, a lot of artists are first responders and people like that who have to work or they're in essential jobs. But like people like me, I've been saying for years, man, if I just had the time, you know,
right.
I would crank out a ton of music. And
right.
I mean, usually I say if I had the time and the money, but right now nobody's got the money. So,
right.
So I feel like I kind of have to be on. I guess what I'm saying is I feel like this is almost like a proving ground opportunity for me to be like, well, cool. So you gave me 3 months. Let's see what all I can crank out. So
yeah, I think that's the challenge right now, right? Because as creative people, you know, whether it's musicians or in another creative field, we finally have the time that we've always wanted, but maybe it's a little tougher to find. Like you said, maybe the money, or maybe it's just the inspiration. I know for me, it's hard to get inspired when I don't leave my property all day. It's just sort of, you know, there's only so much of the same four walls you can see. I think it's evident to me now that life and the living of life is what inspires me. And so yeah, I had to kind of force some creativity. Have you had anything like that, or have you felt like the ideas are coming?
Well, first of all, don't deceive people. I've seen your posts about hiking through the beautiful wildernesses.
That's true. So, I was able to finally get out last weekend. It was the first time that I've been out of the county that I live in 3 months. So we they actually canceled our backcountry wilderness backpacking site. Said that was not safe for social distancing, but thankfully, and this was a trip with my brothers and my dad, we've been looking to take for a long time. So thankfully we have a friend up there that had a cabin, pretty isolated, so we were able to go and do the hikes, just not the backpacking part. So yes, that I did come back from this weekend feeling pretty inspired. But
awesome. Well, for me, I kind of have a backlog of ideas that are kind of just laying around, and so even when I'm with you, I have to be inspired, but for me, it's less about being inspired and more like, or maybe this is what you mean. Like I have to be excited about the idea.
Yes.
At the time. Yeah. So like I have no shortage of ideas. It's just a matter of like, does that get me excited right now. So,
Absolutely.
so during this time, I've written 2 EPs for Death Therapy. One of which
Dang.
is now manufactured, and hopefully I'm going to be mailing those out fairly soon to people. Released a couple singles already, and have another one coming out in a week. The second EP,
the dance therapy one.
yeah.
Okay.
It's all like instrumental electronica stuff, which is something, again, like that was a backlog idea that I've had for a while, and just when it was like, well, I can't go to a real studio, so what can I just do sitting on my laptop? Well, I can totally make dance music. You know,
it sounds incredible. I was gonna say, like, I mean, it's obviously different from stuff you've released, at least that I'm familiar with before. But it's really cool, and even like the really sweet, like, classic video game style visuals you're putting out with it, like the whole concept behind it is really sweet, and it seems like there's been a good reception to it too.
Yeah, so far people seem to get it. I mean, there's been some people who kind of are like, you know, boo, I wish this was something else, but that's always the case. Having been like a dude who was in another band that was somewhat known before this, there's always the people who are like, boo, I wish this was the other thing.
Right.
When I put anything out. But so the second EP is like traditional songs with vocals and stuff, and I've recorded that in a studio, and which has been that's why that one's taking longer, because there was quarantine stuff and trying to get time in the studio. But yeah, so I've been working on that. I'm working on a couple cover songs. I actually, as of today, have a song that just went live on Spotify that nobody knows about, because it's actually for a project that I haven't even really decided is a thing. So I'm working on and then I've got 2 or 3 songs for that other project, which is like kind of like I accidentally wrote some hardcore songs.
Accidentally.
Yeah, I mean, I was just sort of like, well, these don't really fit for the other stuff, so maybe I'll have to hit up old Jason Dunn at Face Down Records and see what he's doing.
I'm sure he would take your call.
Some hardcore music going on, but yeah, so there's that, and yeah, I feel like when it's all said and done over the 3 months, I'm hoping that I wrote something like 30 or 40 songs, and partially at least produced them. So
that's awesome.
Staying busy, man. Staying busy.
Yeah, that's really cool. So I think one of the things we were talking about in the intro is just how your music that you've been involved in, you know, over your career has just really run the gamut of, you know, musical styles, genres, subgenres, whatever you want to call it. I think I saw somebody just describe one of the recent singles as the music that you would find in a boss battle in an old video game. And then I don't even know, what would you call Becoming the Archetype? What would you guys usually classify that?
Yeah, so Becoming the Archetype started as like a technical death metal band.
Okay.
And then kind of progressed from there to like a progressive metal band, and then sort of ended up as sort of like I don't know, like the last record that I did in 2010, which is called Celestial Completion, which was the first record that Daniel Gailey, who's in Fit for a King and Phineas, he jumped in the band during that. I would say that record is just like a straight up experimental, who knows what. There's like a ska song on that album. If you haven't checked it out, there is legitimately like a ska metal song.
That's awesome.
I have not heard that one. I went back and listened to some of the older stuff from there that I hadn't touched on in a while, but now I'm gonna go searching for this.
Yeah, there's a song called Cardiac Rebellion, and it features guest horns by Dennis Culp from Five Iron Frenzy.
Oh man,
awesome!
Which was like my favorite. It was like my favorite band of all time. And so we hit him up, and like there's horns throughout the whole song, even when it's kind of metal, but then it goes just like, there's almost like this time warp kind of like moment in the song. And then it just goes full blown ska at the end.
That's great.
Incredible.
With a solo. So
you've covered more genres than we even came into this conversation knowing about, apparently.
Right.
So
yeah, totally.
How did you?
I feel like it's been a little bit of everything over the past 20 years.
Yeah. How did you get your start in music if you have such an eclectic range of genres that you've been a part of. What kind of kicked the whole thing off?
So I kind of got into playing in a band by accident. But my musical journey sort of starts with just being like a youth group kid who got introduced to MXPX and the Supertones. And
throwbacks.
Yeah. And I was super into that stuff. And then I got into 5 Iron Frenzy. So my journey to like heavier music began with like pop punk and ska stuff in the mid to late 90s. And then I got into POD, and then like Blindside and Project 86.
Yep.
Who those 3, they all like coexisted at that time. POD kind of blasted off past the others, but when I got into it, it was like Blindside and POD and Project 86 were all together like all the time.
Yeah.
And then from there, sort of, I don't know, I got into like Living Sacrifice, which was like my intro to like death metal, music and stuff. So I was totally a tooth and nail kid, which is kind of strange because I've spent 20 something years, putting out records on Solid State Records, Tooth and Nail Records.
Yeah.
But I definitely grew up as a tooth and nail kid. And then, like I said, I kind of got into playing in a band as an accident. I had a friend who was starting a band in his basement. I didn't play an instrument. I wasn't intending to be in the band, but they sort of needed somebody to yell into the microphone. I think we covered like the very first thing I ever did with him. We covered a Zayo song at a school talent show. Like a battle of the bands kind of thing.
I think that might have been my first show too, a school talent show.
Yep.
Yeah. So we scared the crap out of everybody and lost to another band that played like a Beastie Boys tune.
Makes sense, right?
Yeah. So that's how old I am. But anyway, but yeah. So the video games actually, because you mentioned that, play a huge role in that. I didn't realize till I got into like my 30s that how much video game music had influenced my musical taste,
Yeah.
8-bit music and stuff also. But I mean, I don't know, by the time you got to like Nintendo 64, which was like the seminal like system for me, I played a ton of SNES, and I would argue with anybody that the SNES is the best system ever. But the 64 was like, it changed my life.
I'd go 64, but I can see why you would go SNES. Yep.
Well, okay. So just a brief argument for why I think the SNES is a better system. Not that I necessarily enjoyed it more. The 64 doesn't really have any catalog of good like RPGs. Whereas the SNES kind of had everything. There was Mortal Kombat was on the SNES, if people don't remember the original Mortal Kombat. Mm-hmm. And then you had like classic Final Fantasy games also on the SNES. It was also the first controller that had the 4-button configuration and the shoulder buttons, which is what everything has followed after that. Right. So anyway, from an objective level, I feel like that system sort of changed the game. But yeah, I got into Ocarina of Time and stuff.
Good point.
Mario 64 and all those games on 64, and the music is still with me. I watched a video like this morning of some guy playing on classical guitar playing a Super Mario 64 song.
That's awesome.
It's just like, it's a thing, August Burns Red did a Zelda thing, I mean, it's just so.
Yeah, I mean, my brother has a podcast where they review vintage games, and one of the things that they always talk about is the soundtrack. I mean, if it's something that you have to listen to over and over for hours and hours when you're playing, that's going to affect your experience for sure.
It's subconscious, I guess, that's why I say I didn't realize it till I got older. And then people were like, "Why do you make this electronic stuff?" And I'm like, I don't know. It just feels like what I want to hear,
right?
So was this dance therapy EP then something like maybe you didn't know, what project was going to encompass it, but like, was it always kind of something you had wanted to do at some point, or?
Well, yeah, I mean,
just kind of came out of nowhere.
So the first 2 Death Therapy full-length albums each of them has like 1 or 2 songs that are 8-bit kind of influenced. So that was like a part of what I wanted Death Therapy to be from the beginning. But Death Therapy was always sort of like, so in BT, when I was in Becoming the Archetype, so I'm going to call it BTA because that's just I'm used to that. When I was in BTA was like a very traditional like band. Like, we got together, we wrote the songs in person with each other, we jammed, we cussed each other out and said your riffs suck and my riffs are good, and we did all of that and fought and had member changes and toured and broke vehicles down and all kinds of terrible stuff and all kinds of great stuff. But we always had like a very like we were trying to be a metal band. And we wanted to peel people's hair back with technical riffs and blast beats and stuff. With Death Therapy, I kind of just wanted it to be stream of consciousness. Like, it's just me. I do like, I play with a band live when we play, but like I write all the stuff and record the stuff. So I just sort of was like, let's just see what happens. Turns out that when I just see what happens, it sounds kind of like a mix between Limp Bizkit and video game music.
I'd say you're better than Limp Bizkit.
Which is that's what I 1997 plus video game music is that's my life.
There you go. I just went before quarantine. I went this past year to the Wonder Years tour they did around Halloween, where they were dressing, each band on the tour dressed up. They would come dress up as a former band, come out and play like a short, like few song cover set as that band.
Yeah.
And then they would go back in, come back out and do their set. And the Wonder Years was performing as Limp Bizkit, and it was incredible. It was
See?
It was great. But no, that's awesome. You mentioned playing like live, playing with a band live. I know you started it as a 2-piece, and now I believe you added a keyboardist, was it right?
Yeah. So I mean, the core of the band is still really just a 2-piece, but because there's so much electronic element in what we do, I thought in 2018, 2019, I was like, it'd be really cool to bring a live keyboard player to play the keyboard stuff. Plus, I feel like the, one of the things people resonate to when we go play is they're like, wow, I don't get to see a bass guitar player like front a band where I'm not hearing a guitar that covers it up, kind of thing.
Right.
And so a lot of bass players really like that. But then to me, the keyboard, especially in like rock music and metal music, is usually like a side instrument. Like, I mean, this is going to show my age again, but like I can remember like going and seeing like Under Oath in like 2004 or something. And just like the keyboard player basically would like hit a note and then run around the stage.
Yeah, you're like, is he on? Is he the hype man? Is he like?
He wasn't playing the keyboard. He was headbanging, which was amazing, by the way. I'm not insulting.
Prada days when they had their keyboardist and stuff.
Yeah, totally. And I'm not dogging on that. What I'm trying to say is, since my music features a lot of actual keyboard stuff, I thought it'd be kind of cool to like have someone come show off the keyboard.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I've actually had an opportunity to hear just the isolated tracks of keyboard tracks from some of those old Under Oath albums, and it is going on. It is happening. It's squashed to the bottom of the mix, and I think, like you said, that's a lot, especially if you're not a musical person. For somebody who listened to a song who's maybe not a musician. Maybe they would notice if the bass wasn't there, or they would notice if the keyboards weren't there, but it doesn't jump to the forefront of their mind. So it's really cool that you've kind of taken the instruments that people might consider to be background or kind of filling in a different register, and put those on display. So was that a conscious decision when you went into Death Therapy that there's not going to be guitars kind of leading the line?
Yeah, I would say that if there's anything that's going to remain consistent, it'll probably be that there isn't a guitar player. Because as far as like, well, is it a 2-piece band or what? I mean, that part I don't care. Like, one of my musical heroes, which I actually got a chance to record an album with him in 2008, is Devin Townsend. And I think Devin's a genius, and he's amazing. He's also completely insane. But Devin has a Devin Townsend band or whatever, and sometimes it's just Devin and he blows your mind, and then other times it's Devin with a literal circus on stage. You can actually look it up. He's performed with a circus,
Guy is insane.
Yeah, and so
in the best way possible.
Right. And so I guess what I'm saying is like I kind of look up to that, and I think if Death Therapy ever did a tour where it was possible to bring like 3 drummers and like 2 keyboard players and like, you know, backup singers and like dancers, dude, I would be all for it. I don't care if it's a 2-piece or a 30-piece. But I doubt that will ever get away from the, you know, the bass driving the thing. That's kind of the thing. So
what motivated you to kind of put the bass at the center like that?
I felt like it was a challenge personally, because in Becoming the Archetype, I was the lead singer, the vocalist, and I played the bass, but I didn't really write parts. And I feel like a lot of times with bass, it's super easy to just like, well, okay, what did the guitar player play? Okay, cool. Well, I'll just play something to fill in, you know? But if you actually have to write a whole song that focuses around the bass, all of a sudden it's a challenge to make the bass parts interesting enough to carry the song forward. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's amazing songs out there, classic songs like Another One Bites the Dust or whatever, where the guitar comes in and it's just like a little added icing on the cake, but the bass is what drives the song.
Right.
So it can be done. And I just feel like with heavy music, it's almost never the thing. So I wanted to try to challenge myself in that regard. But there's also a practical aspect, which is like, I'm a bass player. I'm not really a guitar player. I know you do the octave thing, like I do the octave thing. Mm-hmm. We do in the opposite directions. Right. But like
we'll have to do a split where we like combine, and we bring the guitar into Death Therapy and you bring the bass into American Arson or something.
It'd be really fun. It'd be really funny if we used the octave down guitar tracks from you and the octave up bass tracks from me.
There you go.
So it's the bass that sounds like the guitar and the guitar that sounds like the bass. That would actually be kind of fun. But I guess what I'm saying is like there's a practical aspect where if I was going to do a project where it's basically just me, and the reason for that is I want it to be something sustainable. I quit music for like 6 years, five or 6 years. Didn't even touch an instrument. I put it under my bed. I didn't play at church. I didn't play anywhere. After I left Becoming the Archetype, and I think it's still surprising to my wife that I'm playing music now, because she's kind of like, she just thinks like, well, you know, that was something Jason used to do.
Right.
So I guess what I'm saying is when I started Death Therapy, when I started it, I didn't intend it to be a band. I was just like, I want to write music because I got music inside that I want to write.
Yeah.
And once I determined it was going to be a band, it was like, how can I make this sustainable so that in 5 years, I'm not going, hey, I hate to acknowledge the band's breaking up, you know?
Yeah.
If it's just me and my bass, then the band's probably not going to break up. It just might change whether or not we can tour. So that's actually been one of the great blessings of this quarantine. Like I said, I totally understand if a lot of bands are cranking out new material during this quarantine. Some people can't. But like for me, while I'm waiting on the second EP worth of stuff, I'm just like, well, cool. Let me just create some more instrumentals and let me do some cover songs and write some hardcore songs on accident, you know?
Yeah, I think there's a freedom when you reduce, the numbers. It obviously comes with challenges, like you said, the practical challenge, but I think there's freedom. You know, something we've gotten asked about quite a bit is why we, chose to be a 2-piece, and then, all of the advantages to being a 2-piece, whether it's logistical or whether it's just, less interpersonal tension, things like that. But yeah, one of the, and there are certainly all of those positive aspects, but when it does come down to let's get on the stage and play this stuff live, there are practical challenges that exist for sure, for as much as for as many positives as there are on the other side. So what do you usually do live to make sure that you still have that full heavy sound being carried, through the bass, whether from a technical perspective with gear or, what is your strategy there?
So I have been on the journey with that. So I've gone all the way from the like humongous pedal board. Mm-hmm. Shout out to Evan's pedal board. I've gone all the way to the humongous pedal board. And then we did a tour with Wolves at the Gate, and Wolves at the Gate was kind of like Steve from Wolves at the Gate was kind of like, dude, that pedal board's ridiculous. And I was like, okay. He was like, dude, you got to minimize that thing. And I was like, okay. So I tried, actually in the middle of that tour, went to a music store and put it all into like rack form, other than like two or three pedals. So like I actually had the pedals in the rack in a drawer.
Oh, cool.
So it's like I still had the pedals, but the ones I didn't ever touch were in a drawer. And then I had the couple or three that I did touch in the volume pedal or whatever. So I minimized it to a rack unit. And then I was like, okay, well, let's just go digital. So then I started doing digital, you know, this or that, and splitting the signal out digitally. The key to the sound, for people who don't know, is splitting the signal, you know, at some point early in the chain. So I split it, and then one side of it goes into a pedal, an octave pedal. I use a pitchfork pedal. I think it's a great pedal.
Love the pitchfork. Have one as well.
Yep. I've tried a lot of them. I used to have a Pog. I think the Pog works better for guitar than the bass. The pitchfork is just perfect for the bass. So anyway, and then one side goes to a guitar. So what I would do is I would show up live. I would send one side to a guitar amp, and I would send one side to a bass amp. And I have people, even like last year at, what was it, Uprise Fest, Daniel from Fit for a King, Daniel Gailey, came up. He's like, dude, I just can't believe how much it sounds like you're playing guitar. But then even since then, I was kind of like, well, you know what? Maybe that's not the approach I want to take, because I feel like a lot of people listen to Death Therapy and they don't know that it's just bass.
Okay.
Like it's almost like I've done such a good job of making it sound like a guitar that I've tricked them.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? So like, so if they see us live, we get a lot of comments like, oh, I didn't understand your band until I saw you live, and now I kind of get it.
Right.
And so even now I'm starting to think in terms of like, so now my pedal board is like, it's like 4 pedals, and I'm just trying to go for like, I'm still using a little bit of that octave up sound, but usually when we show up live now, I'm just plugging into like an 810 cab and just going for a humongous bass sound with some of that high end.
Okay.
Because I kind of want it to sound more like a big fat nasty bass, you know, than
right.
So it's a little more obvious to people. So I guess what I would say is it's a difference between like, you know, a band like Death from Above, 1979, or the Royal Blood. Like Royal Blood does a really good job of tricking you sometimes into thinking it's a guitar. Right. If you're not aware. But Death from Above is like, it's just a big fat nasty bass. So we'll see how that works out. But like the new stuff I'm working on that's got vocals, I think we're shooting more for just a big nasty bass, so that when people hear it, their ear will immediately recognize, oh, this is a bass guitar band. Yeah. You know what I mean? So
yeah, we deal with a lot of the same kind of stuff.
And to be fair, you have the unfortunate like association of playing like at Christian music festivals where every Christian rock band doesn't have a bass player, but they just use a backing track.
I didn't think.
So I think a lot of the bands don't have any actual musicians. It's just everything's on the backing track.
Okay. But what I'm saying is like, so a year or two ago we played, and I won't name any of the bands, but we played on a stage at a festival. So I won't name the festival either, but so people don't go look it up.
Played a stage at a festival.
We played at a festival on the rock stage, and I'm not kidding. I filled in on bass guitar for Project 86, so that'll narrow it down for some people. So they didn't have a bass player because I filled in, and then all of the other bands on the stage that night, except for us and Demon Hunter, had bass on the backing track. So there were like 8 bands that didn't have a bass player, and they just all. Gosh. So then, if American Arson were to show up, they would probably just assume that you have the bass on a backing track, right? Because that's par for the course. And that, to me, as a bass player, of course, bums me out that none of those bands. And I'm trying to corner the market. I'm like, hey guys, I'm available. I'll be at the festival. Right. You just want to throw me some money? I'll learn your songs.
Play 8 sets in a row.
I'll just play every single set.
Yeah. So there you go. If you're a bass player out there, this is what the world thinks of your value right now.
Yeah, you can easily be replaced. I get asked the same question though. Sometimes people will come up after show, even when they see it and they get what we're doing, they'll say, "Oh, so like, is the guitar on a track?" And I'm like, "No." Yeah. Like so now I'll even sometimes in between songs I'll even just like give a couple like chunkas to be like, just so you know. It's not on a backing track. This is me playing.
Yeah.
So,
Well, we used to explain live looping to everybody, like at every show. It's hey, this is kind of what we're doing.
It just got to be not worth it.
Yeah, it's like, dude, if you can't watch and realize that I just played a part, I hit the pedal, it played back, I played a different part, I hit the pedal. Then you're probably really not paying attention, and you're not going to listen to me explaining live looping anyway. Yeah. So now we talk as little as possible during this.
Yeah, and that totally, I get that.
We also had someone ask if we needed a drummer once, and I just kind of
Yeah, we have a collection.
I get that about guitar players all the time. They're like, hey, man, if you ever want to get a guitar player in the band.
Yeah, almost as if you hadn't thought of it, right? As if it's like, right. Oh, I didn't realize.
We've been a band for 5 years, and we just keep looking. We can't find one.
Yeah. A rock band with a guitar player. That's something I had never, just had never crossed my mind until you sent me this random Instagram message. And
so I know you're interviewing me. I'm not interviewing you, but just as a random, like, I didn't even realize I was sitting where I'm sitting. But so speaking of gear, when you played at this venue, which you may recognize the back
is that the back hallway of the Chain Reaction?
Correct.
Yes.
When you played at this venue, I heard there were some power issues that you ran into with your pedal board.
To say the least.
Well,
the whole stage just blew up.
Yeah. So would you say, and this is all I'm saying, would you say that you've run into issues where your sound is super dependent on your gear working, and it just becomes a nightmare when it won't work?
Well, I guess the short answer would be yes, because it happened that time. We did get to play, and we do have a few songs too that don't have any looping. I think actually our newest album is more heavily in favor of songs that don't have looping. And that was the side of the pedal board that power was not getting to for some reason, was the looper side. So
spaceship was just too much for the outlet.
But the longer answer would be that is the first time that's ever happened. We've
really
on that scale. We've had minor, obviously like minor technical difficulties live,
but those are the ones that any normal band would have. Nothing that is inherent to the way
like
that we
play. A loop playing back wrong or something like that, maybe one pedal goes out or something, but it's usually something he or I are able to like fix really quickly on stage. Even if we have to stop, we're able to get it going again and not have any issues. That was the first time we'd had it to the scale where we quite literally had to stop our whole set.
Right. Well, the reason I asked that question is just because in this whole realm of the conversation we're talking about, there are always the purist type, like old school dudes who are like, man, I don't even use any pedals. I just plug straight into the amp and I just go,
Right.
Which loved the dudes in Deathbreaker and was super like bummed when Kevin got a pedal board. Because Kevin was just a plug it into the amp kind of guy for like years.
You guys get announced as them once?
Oh yeah, that's happened. We've been on stage. I was actually there when they said the wrong name, and I like called the MC back and was like, "Hey man, no, we're actually Death Therapy, not Deathbreaker." So totally.
Yeah, I think there's a fine line between relying on your technology or gear or whatever, and using it to expand your creative horizons. When I first started American Arson, I had no idea that if this was going to work, if it was even an option. I bought several pedals and then sent them back because ideas that I had didn't work. And so it was a slow evolution for sure. And I think that a lot of people could look at it and say, yeah, the gear is sort of a crutch at that point, because it is, we do the looping, which is sort of like having a lead guitarist. We do the octave, which is sort of like having a bass. But but for me, it's just more of, like you said, the challenge, right? How big can I make this one instrument sound? And and you're always adding new things. I know just recently within the last year, I started stringing my guitar with baritone strings, and we're tuning down to drop B, and we went down to drop A for a song on the new album. So, just trying to find that new territory and expand your horizons, because anybody can put together a band with 6 or 7 musicians and have layer upon layer of incredible, sounding things. But
as long as you can get those musicians together and to agree.
Right.
To
I was just gonna say, but then can you get those 6 or
But
7
if they're
musicians to go on a tour without killing each other?
Right. If you can get them together, then you can totally make it sound full. I agree with that point. And yeah, I think that's part of the fun. And honestly, like, I've made the joke before, but like, there's no guitar player and bass player who's ever been as tight with each other as I am with myself. So like, as long as me and the drummer are tight,
right?
Like, now all of a sudden we have a sound that's tighter than a lot of bands who have 4 or 5 guys, because the backing track is tight. So I've made it a little harder on myself, bringing a keyboard player and and stuff like that. But I guess, yeah, I'm with you. It's a challenge, but there's also like I said, there's the upsides of, like, if we're really clicking, if we're really tight, then it's hard for anybody to touch how tight we are.
Yeah.
So that's a good point. And even, like, I know, just like from the way, like, me and Evan have clicked and stuff like that, and thinking about bringing it, if we'll probably always stay a 2-piece, but like, thinking about the way, like, if we were to try and bring someone else into that fold, like you said, like, you're bringing a whole different, like, musical style live and writing and stuff into the fold, and trying to make that, I think, probably both on a personal and musical level, trying to get everyone in a band to mesh is probably the top. Find 4 or 5, 6 or whatever people, or even 3 for that matter, that all mesh musically and artistically, and even from a stage presence perspective is probably the hardest thing. And we talk all the time both about the benefits. Like, people ask us, like, as a 2-piece, what's the hardest things, or what's the biggest benefits, and of course there's some challenges, but I honestly tell people, like, it's mostly feels beneficial live. We just feed off each other, and we click really well. We have since the beginning. And then even on a personal level, like, from a logistics standpoint, getting 2 people in one place is a lot easier than getting 5 people in one place, or getting 2 people. You mentioned, some of us, and a lot of us in the scene, in the industry, currently have other jobs and stuff too. So, like, getting 2 people to be able to take the time off for a festival or a tour that we want to do is a lot easier than getting a whole band. So it makes it, like you mentioned, more sustainable long term too. We don't have to go back and forth about, well, so and so wants to tour more, well, so and so has to work more, so
when I left Becoming the Archetype, and this happens to tons of people's favorite bands, it wasn't because I wanted to quit the band. It was because other people in the band wanted to tour constantly at that particular point in time. And my wife was pregnant and about to have our first child. And I I told her, I'm not going to be out on the road touring when we have a child. Like, I just not going to do that. So the band had a choice to either slow itself down to my pace, or to move on without me. And at that point, they didn't want to slow down, which is fine. But my point is, a lot happens to a ton of bands. So if you start a band with a certain pace of, like, a person or 2 or whatever, and you're like, look, this is the pace we live on, and if we get to do more stuff, that's awesome. And if we don't get to do stuff, nobody's going to be pissed, then that actually works way better for the band moving forward, which is why you see, if you watch, and I mean, I know you know this, but, like, a lot of people who don't know the inside baseball of the industry, if you watch your favorite bands over time, a lot of times you'll see certain members falling away, and there's this, like, you'll find out there's, like, one dude who basically, like, he sets the pace of the band, and he oftentimes writes most of the music, and he kind of is the band. And so, like, when you can just sort of start with that as the piece that you know what I mean?
That's a great point.
You're saving a lot of trouble. So
yeah, I think that you see so many creative projects that fall apart because of the pacing is not equal between the members, and the more members you take out of that, and the more you reduce that number, 2 things happen. I think one, it's more likely that that a smaller number of people are going to be able to match the pace. But two, it's more obvious when there is a disconnect in the pace. If I want to go fast and Jesse wants to go slow, or vice versa, it's really easy for us to figure out where that disconnect is. We don't have to, there doesn't need to be factions forming in the group. There doesn't need to be things said behind backs or anything like that, because I can see the pace that he wants to go and he can see the pace that I want to go. And it might even be that compromise at that point is easier, because you're just taking the average of two people's paces.
I was going to say, even if there is a some sort of a disconnect or disagreement, it's a lot easier for him to just shoot me a text or hit me up on a call and just be like, hey, how do we meet in the middle here? Like, and you know, sometimes it's me realizing that, you know, his side might work the best for the betterment of the band, or you know, might vice versa, or you know, it's a lot easier to find a way to meet in the middle. Like, hey, okay, you need time for this. Let's sacrifice this so that we can do this later on.
Yeah, and there's another level at which, like, I mean, it's something that I've noticed in my own, like, so I'm 37 this year. Hooray for me, right?
You have a happy birthday. I don't know when it is, but it's sometime this year. So
it'll be this year. I usually have a birthday. I usually have one each year, but I was 20 years old when we signed with Solid State Records, and we went touring across the world. And I remember being like, I can remember that I was 20 because I can remember there were things like rental cars we couldn't do because nobody was 21.
Yep.
And it was weird to us because we were like, I thought that was 18, but anyway, some states it's 21.
Yeah.
But at 37, I not only have a different pace for myself. I have 2 kids and a wife, and but I also have friends who live at so what I'm trying to say is, like, I have a drummer who plays with me a lot. He's played with me since the beginning. When I first started this thing, I asked several drummers, did they want to play with me? And most of them were like, boo, this is lame, because my demos are usually really bad. No. You have to have a super, like, you have to have a super
about
vivid,
our demos and just laughing.
My imagination, like, I can hear a really bad demo and I know what it's going to sound like, but to try to get other people. So I have the guy who eventually was like, yeah, dude, totally. He's the guy that I want because he is willing to take it slow and trust me and my vision. He's not trying to take over.
Yeah.
And he doesn't get hurt, you know, if it's if I can't do an opportunity or if he's not available and I have to bring a different drummer. But then there's another component that a lot of people don't know about Death Therapy, and that is I have a friend, a really good friend of mine. His name is Brian. If you look on all of our liner notes, most of the keyboard parts were written by Brian Wages. He's not looking to tour. He doesn't want to play shows. But he loves making music, and he and I get along super well. So actually what I do is I just write my stuff and then I just email it to Brian. I don't even tell him what to do. I just say, hey man, just go hog wild. And then he'll send me back. Awesome. He'll send me back like 30 stems for different keyboard parts in the song. And sometimes I'll use all 30 and sometimes I'll use 10, you know? And there's no egos involved. I guess is what I'm saying is, it's like, I can remember being 20 years old in a band with 4 other guys. And there was so much, even though we thought we were humble Christian dudes, there was so much ego of, like, I guess what I'm saying is, I feel like a lot of bands that sustain and they stay for a long time, it's because they reach a place of maturity where the egos go away and each person finds the role that works for them. And yeah, I think it's a cool place to be, honestly. And I'm kind of glad that I'm there. I know some people are bummed that I couldn't find that place with Becoming the Archetype. But we all live in different states, and we all have, what's weird is we all have 2 kids, I think. So every person in Becoming the Archetype now has 2 kids and lives in a different state for the most part, other than like 1 or 2 of us. And it's just, you know what I mean? To get all those people, to get all those people's schedules synced up is super unlikely.
Now, approaching it from the other side, though, you know, this is something that I have dealt with, and I just wonder if you've dealt with it as well. Do you ever look at the music and say, man, could this song be a better song if I was willing to kind of step outside of that, that paradigm, and if there was a guitar come down, and obviously with the dance therapy stuff, you had some guys come in and do some really cool guitar solos.
Yeah, I was gonna say you had Jack from War of Ages, right?
Yeah, and Daniel from Phineas for King.
But that's obviously not your main thing. So do you ever find yourself in that position where you're thinking, man, this would make the song better, or is that just something that's always going to exist? I think I remember being in a band with 2 guitarists and wishing we had 3 so we could play harmony parts while another guy was doing rhythm. So is that just something that
we had? Becoming the Archetype had 3 guitar players for the first several tours we did.
You probably wanted 4 a couple times, right?
Yeah,
so
because it was just extra chunky. But well, I've thought of it. It usually comes in hindsight. It's usually sort of like when I'm recording it, I'm like, dude, this is awesome. This is what it needs to sound like. And then I'll put the song out, and then I'll realize in hindsight, I'm like, yeah, I mean, maybe if this had had a guitar on it, it would have been a lot heavier to people. Mm-hmm. And so like there's a particular, so for instance, on the last record, so the first record, everything's in D, or at least is D tuning on the bass. I realized that if I, D standard, I realized that if I went below the key of D on the bass, it sounded super weird and floppy, and the octave thing didn't work as well. Well, but then for some reason I threw that out the window and decided I was going to do 3 songs in the key of B for the second record. And I thought, well, just make them so much heavier. And, all these bands tune down to like G and F now.
Were you using jail bars as bass strings at that point? Like,
yeah, a garden hose.
Right.
And but then when we play them live, since I'm not switching over to like a 5-string or something, mm-hmm. Just tuning down, those songs don't translate live at all. Like they sound like it just sounds like sludge.
Right.
And so, yeah, in hindsight, I've looked back and I'm like, oh man, either we just can't play those songs, or I almost need to like get my keyboard player to pick up a guitar for that song. My keyboard player is an all around amazing musician. He plays keyboard, guitar, everything. He sings. He's great.
Just have him have a guitar strapped to his back while he's playing,
or a keytar.
There you go.
I don't know. The whole stage might spontaneously combust if there's a death therapy song. The guitar player came out on the.
There's the very first tour I ever did in my life was with a band that I know you guys will remember, but some people don't remember the band Showbread.
Yeah. Yep.
And Showbread at that point in their career had a keytar player.
Was that when they were still wearing the red pants?
Oh yeah. They were rocking the red pants. There were 7 guys on stage. Yep. The drummer had like a kick drum that was like bigger than the whole drum set. It was unbelievably amazing.
Yep.
So sometimes I think, man, I just need to get a keytar for my keyboard player, None of this stationary keyboard nonsense.
My brother played a keytar in a band that we were in together back in the day. And then that got, that was one of those novelty things at a show.
Right.
And then he moved on to playing a Guitar Hero guitar, which he had worked out how to program that into.
That's amazing.
Yeah, through MIDI.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so I think you'd probably get a couple of raised eyebrows. There'd probably be some people that would stop by and say,
we could only play with Guitar Hero guitars. Yeah. That's a great idea.
Yeah. So what's up next for Death Therapy then, as we move hopefully out of this quarantine period? Obviously the whole summer festival season is now not going to happen, but
we're playing a festival that seems to be like the only one that's trying to happen in July. We're playing a festival in Indiana called Kingdom Come Festival, July 10th and 11th in Kokomo, Indiana, with Spoken and Disciple and a bunch of other cool bands. It's a really fun, like free festival they do every year. So people just come and make donations and stuff. So it's like a little crowd. So I think it probably will happen, because it's not like some of these festivals where there's like 50,000 people there to see the main stage,
right?
Yeah.
This is it's a 1-stage festival, a smaller kind of family atmosphere. So I think it may work. It's so that's July, and then after that, though, you're right. Like everything else fell through for July. audio feed got moved to second week of August or first week of August?
It's Labor Day weekend.
Yeah, Labor Day weekend.
Audio feed. Yeah.
So audio feed is happening, and I'm excited about that. And then
hopefully,
yeah,
cross the fingers.
That's
I know. There's still the possibility that all this stuff gets canceled for good, because now that I saw some report on the news yesterday saying, second wave is now officially here because of, people have been out so much. I don't know.
Changes every week. We never know.
Yeah. They blame my state for that, I guess, because I'm in Georgia. And,
yeah. You guys are like the first ones to open up, right?
But okay, never mind. I'm not going down that road.
That's a whole other part.
What's weird? I was just going to say, what's weird about that is like my church is still not open.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, Georgia supposedly been open, and like, everybody's strangers making out with strangers in the parking lots and stuff. But like, everything's closed. Like you can't even go sit down in a Chick-fil-A, that's like church. And
the Lord's chicken.
The Lord's chicken. But Waffle House is open, praise the Lord.
Anyway. They never pass health code standards anyways. So
that is the odd thing. It's like we just recently started opening up over the past like week or two. Like a week or so ago, a little over a week ago, I think now they announced that like they were officially reopening most parts of the state. And then this week they officially announced that like salons and stuff, that was the big thing here in Michigan, like salons and barber shops and tattoo shops still weren't allowed to open. And we were pretty sure the last state left where that was the case, or one of the last ones. But like you said, even now that everybody's allowed to be open, like occasionally I've gone to get something from the store, like, oh, I need this, part for something. And then they're still closed. And it's like half of the stores are open, half of them aren't. And every time I like need to go get something, unless it's groceries, I don't know, like, is it even worth leaving the house? Because is like, I like call places now, like, hey, are you am I allowed to come there? Like,
yeah, totally. Well, I guess all I'm saying is I'm hopeful that these festivals will happen.
Yeah.
I think Lifest
August
rescheduled to August. Yeah, after the weekend after Labor Day.
Are you on that one too?
Yep.
Cool. Well, maybe we'll see each other
and hoping to play Uprise Fest still, which is in September, which is always a wonderful festival. And we'll see what else. So what's ahead for Death Therapy is trying to prepare for those. Hoping that they happen, learning to play with a mask on.
Yeah.
I'm so super jealous of like Slipknot and bands like that, because they
don't even have to adjust.
Used to it.
Yeah. They just have to make sure everyone in the crowd wears a mask.
I think we'll probably see a rise in vocalists bringing their own microphone for the time being, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I know my wife always says, you know how many colds you've probably contracted by sharing a microphone with somebody at a show?
So I'm going to live forever as a result. I would never. Yeah, I've played Chain Reaction enough times that I don't have to worry about coronavirus.
I was going to say, with some of the venues that we've all probably played, we're, I'm sure, immune to almost any.
Yeah, Ebola.
Yes. By the way, I love Chain Reaction. I've said two things about it that make it sound like I don't. I have the picture on my wall.
Yeah,
because I love Chain Reaction. We played some of our best shows there.
We love it too, but the next time we go back, I'm hooking my pedal board up to a car battery. I'm not trusting them. I'm not trusting any of those plugs.
No, yeah, it's a super rad venue.
It's cool.
I love how they. I mean, it's a legendary venue in the scene, but I mean, even just how they have all those shirts covering the walls and the ceiling and everything. It's super rad to walk in there and see some of the people that have rolled through over the years. But yeah, it's we will have to be aware of the now we know, I guess, our issue.
You go to listen. All you got to do. This is an easy solution. There's a Home Depot nearby. You go rent a generator.
Yep.
You throw it just outside the door in the front. You tell them, look, I'm going to run this generator for our 35-minute set.
It's Cornerstone Festival 2008 all over again.
Exactly.
We should just have that on. That could be like another shtick that we do. We just have a generator on stage because nothing can power our gear.
And everyone dies of the carbon monoxide poisoning.
And you don't need any interludes in between your songs, because everyone can just listen to the generator roar. So, right. Face-On Family really picked us up at that show though when our stuff cut out.
I heard.
They all sang our songs, and it was really cool. So we owe them big time. Well,
yeah, man, totally.
Well, thank you so much.
Other than the shows, just like if people will kind of keep checking out the new music. That's my goal. New music. I'm gonna try to crank out a bunch of stuff. So
absolutely. And Spotify, Apple Music.
Yeah, where can people find you?
Yeah, it's on everything. As of right now, the stuff I'm releasing is independent, so it's going through the the DistroKid kind of route. So it's on all the platforms.
Cool.
Like every once in a while, DistroKid will hit you up with a like, "Hey, your song is now available on McDonald's Kids Club Music" or something. It's like, wait, what? Like, I didn't know that was a thing. Like there's like a toy that they just released at McDonald's that's got my song on it or something. Actually, that would be amazing.
That would be really cool.
That'd be amazing.
Well, I think that's the gold standard.
Yeah.
Do you get free like complimentary meals then while you're on the road if they use your song? Like if Taco Bell decides to use one of our songs, does that mean we get free beefy 5-layer burritos every time we want to stop?
Totally. I'm the worst when I'm on the road, because now so when we used to tour and I was younger, we would just eat like Taco Bell, and we would have like a $5 per diem, and it was like, well, what can I eat that's going to only be $5 for the day? But now I'm in my like late 30s, I guess, officially in my late 30s. And
you said 37?
Yeah.
No, that's mid 30s.
Mid 30s.
Yeah, mid 30s. Okay. Late 30s is like the back 39. Half of 38 and all of 39.
Late 30s is 39 and 3/4.
Yeah, you're still mid 30s.
But now I guess what I'm saying is, so now I've settled into this thing in my life where like when I go out on tour, I want to like find whatever the awesome local place to eat is.
Yeah.
Yep.
And like
100%.
So I just like try to avoid Taco Bell like the plague when I'm on tour now. Because I did it so much. I ate so much. We learned, I guess this was in late 90s, early 2000s, we learned that the cheapest thing we could eat and be totally full was to go to Waffle House and get the triple order of hash browns with everything on it.
Yep.
And it was like $4. It was like $4, and it was like 4 pounds of food.
4 pounds of starch.
Oh yeah. Just with chili and gravy and cheese and onions and peppers and everything on it. And so I can't do that anymore when I'm on tour. So usually I'll just try to find like, what's the cool place around here that we need to go to? So.
Yeah. Look for those food Instagrams.
We spend like the drive between cities having whoever's not driving look up like the most like the coolest or most ridiculous like local place to eat if we know we're gonna have time. Either that or like me and Evan, because we try and eat as healthy as we can, relatively while we're home.
Right.
When we get on tour, usually the first day, like that first gas station stop to fill up like the tank, we're like all gung ho about, cut loose. Like, let's grab all the the Danishes and gas station junk food we can. And then like inevitably by that first afternoon, by the end of the first drive, me and Evan are both just kind of like, this was a bad idea.
So it sounds like we should tour together since we're both looking for those cool
I
spots.
think that needs to happen regardless. And I think we need to, when we do that, we need to coordinate beforehand and come up with a way to like leave the gear on stage and play a couple songs together.
Yes.
Which I think would be awesome.
I would love that.
Yeah.
Let's make it happen.
Sure. Totally.
Well, Jason, thank you so much for being on with us today. And, we're looking forward to hopefully getting to connect with you at some of these festivals and
hopefully seeing you in person in a couple months.
Yeah. Hopefully getting outside of the four walls
for
of our
a couple
houses,
years or a couple decades. Who knows?
Cool. All right, man. We'll have a good one. Stay safe. And I hope and pray for you that your Chick-fil-A is open soon.
Thank you.
All right. See you later, man. Thank you for listening to the American Arson Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to leave a positive comment or review. Connect with us online through Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, or Twitter, and check out AmericanArson.com for music, merch, and upcoming tour dates. We'll be back next week with another episode. Until then, stay inspired, stay positive, and keep creating.